The Romantic Period, Video 3. In this chapter, it is two Romantic composers and their public. The composer's role in society changed radically during Beethoven's lifetime, which was 1770 to 1827. In earlier periods, part of a musician's job had been the composition of works for a specific occasion or audience. Thus, Bach wrote cantatas for weekly church services, and Haydn composed symphonies for concerts in palaces. But Beethoven was one of the first great composers to work as a freelance musician outside the system of aristocratic or church patronage. The image of Beethoven as a free artist inspired Romantic musicians, who often composed to meet an inner need rather than to fulfill a commission. Romantic composers were interested not only in pleasing their contemporaries, but also in being judged favorably by posterity. In other words, throughout time, and after they were dead, they wanted to still be judged favorably. Sometimes the Romantic composer was a free artist by necessity rather than choice. Because of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, 1789 to 1814, many aristocrats could no longer afford to maintain a private opera house or an orchestra or even a composer in residence. Romantic composers wrote primarily for a middle-class audience whose size was being increased because of the Industrial Revolution. During the 19th century, cities expanded dramatically, and a sizable number of people wanted to hear and play music. The first half of the 19th century also witnessed the founding of music conservatories throughout Europe. In the United States, conservatories were founded in Chicago, Cleveland, Boston, and Oberlin, Ohio, as well as Philadelphia during the 1860s. More young men and women who never before studied to be professional musicians were able to do that. At first, women were only accepted as students of performance, but in the late 1880s, they could study music composition as well. Now we're at 3 in the chapter, which is called 3, the Art Song. One of the most distinctive forms of Romantic music was the art song, which was a composition for solo voice and piano. Poetry and music were ultimately fused in the art song. It was not an accident that the form flowered with the emergence of a rich body of Romantic poetry in the early 19th century. So we have a couple different types of forms in these art songs. So song forms, composers used many different methods to set music to poems made up of several stanzas. They may employ what's called a strophic form, which they repeat the same music for each stanza in each poem. Like Amazing Grace, when we sing Amazing Grace, we sing the melody, we sing it through, we go back to the second verse, we sing the same thing again. That's called strophic form. Other composers might use something called through composed form, which they wrote new music for each stanza. In this through composed form allowed the composers to reflect the poem's changing moods. So then there's one other thing that happened called a song cycle. Romantic art songs were sometimes grouped together in a cycle that may be unified by a storyline that runs through the poems or by musical ideas linking the songs. Among the great Romantic song cycles was Winterreise, which is Winter's Journey, 1827 by Schubert, and The Poet's Love, 1840 by Schumann.